Forget everything you thought you knew about history. While Hollywood and history books have often focused on male warriors, Africa's past is filled with fierce, brilliant, and powerful women who led armies, defended their people, and built empires. These weren't just queens who ruled from a throne. They were commanders on the front lines, strategists who outsmarted their enemies, and symbols of resistance who inspired generations. Today, we're counting down the top 5 most legendary African female warriors who changed the course of history. Get ready to be inspired, because their stories are some of the most epic you'll ever hear. Coming in at number 5 is Dahome's deadliest weapon, the Agaji. You might know them as the Dahomey Amazons, but they were so much more than a myth. These were real-life elite soldiers, an all-female army from the kingdom of Dahomey in what is now Benin. For over 2 centuries, from the 1600s to the late 1800s, these women were the backbone of the kingdom's military might. They weren't just soldiers. They were rigorously trained from a young age in survival, discipline, and brutal combat. They were known for their incredible speed, strength, and a fighting style so fierce that European soldiers who faced them wrote home in absolute terror. The Agaji were sworn to celibacy and considered wives of the king, dedicating their entire lives to the art of war. They had their own hierarchy, their own rituals, and a bond of sisterhood forged in battle. Their motto was conquer or die, and they lived by it. They were instrumental in expanding the Dahomey kingdom, and were the last line of defense against French colonial invasion. The Agaji weren't just warriors. They were a symbol of female power, and a military force unlike any other in history. At number 4, we have a queen who fought against one of the world's greatest empires and nearly won. Her name is Amanirenas, the Candake, or Queen, of the Kingdom of Kush. We're talking about modern-day Sudan, around 25 BC. While Cleopatra was dealing with Rome and Egypt, another powerful queen further south was preparing for war. When the Romans, led by Emperor Augustus, conquered Egypt and tried to push south into Kushite territory, they had no idea who they were about to face. Amanirenas, described as a fierce, one-eyed queen, having lost an eye in a previous battle, was not about to let her kingdom fall. She personally led her army in a surprise attack against the Roman forces stationed in southern Egypt. They were incredibly successful, capturing 3 major Roman cities and even tearing down statues of Emperor Augustus. As a final act of defiance, she took the bronze head of one of these statues and buried it under the steps of her temple so that she and her people could forever walk over the head of their enemy. The Romans retaliated, of course, but after years of intense fighting, Amanirenas and her Kushite army fought them to a standstill. In the end, Rome was forced to sign a peace treaty that was highly favorable to Kush. They withdrew their troops and waived all demands for tribute. Amanirenas didn't just defend her kingdom. She stared down the Roman Empire and forced it to respect her power. Now for our number 3 spot, the warrior princess who became a legend. Let's travel to 16th century Zazzau, a kingdom in what is now northern Nigeria. This is the home of Amina, the warrior queen. From a young age, Amina was different. While other girls were learning domestic skills, Amina was training with the Zazzau military. Her grandfather noticed her spirit and started teaching her political and military strategy. By the time her brother became king, Amina was already a celebrated warrior, leading her own cavalry unit. When her brother passed away, Amina ascended to the throne, not as a regent, but as the absolute ruler. And she didn't waste a day. Her reign was defined by almost constant warfare, but not for plunder. Amina's goal was to expand her kingdom and control the lucrative trade routes that crossed the region. She was a brilliant military strategist, credited with introducing iron armor and building the famous earthen walls, known as Amina's walls, around her cities for protection. Some of these walls still stand today. She commanded an army of 20,000 soldiers and personally led them into every battle. Her reign lasted for 34 years, a period of unprecedented prosperity and power for Zatzao. Queen Amina became a figure of legend, a symbol of female leadership and military genius whose story is still told to inspire young girls across Nigeria and beyond. At number 2, we have a freedom fighter who united a nation against colonial invaders. Her name is Ya Asantewa of the Ashanti Empire in modern-day Ghana. In the late 19th century, the British Empire was aggressively trying to colonize West Africa. They had already exiled the Ashanti king and were now demanding the ultimate symbol of the Ashanti nation, the golden stool. The golden stool wasn't just a throne. It was believed to house the very soul of the Ashanti people. When the British governor demanded it be handed over, the remaining Ashanti chiefs were hesitant, fearing a war they couldn't win. This is where Ya Asantewa, the queen mother of a nearby state, stepped up. Seeing the fear and indecision of the men, she delivered one of the most powerful speeches in African history. She declared that if the men of Ashanti would not go forward, then the women would. She would call upon her fellow women, and they would fight the white men until the last of them fell on the battlefield. Her words ignited the spirit of resistance. Ya Asantewa became the commander-in-chief of the Ashanti army in what would be known as the War of the Golden Stool, the last major war of the Anglo-Ashanti conflicts. For months, she led a rebellion that took the British completely by surprise. Though she was eventually captured and exiled, her defiance ensured the Golden Stool was never surrendered. Ya Asantewa remains a national hero in Ghana, a powerful symbol of courage and resistance against oppression. And now, the number 1 African female warrior in history. A queen who fought for 40 years to keep her people free. Her name is Nzinga, the 17th century queen of the Ndongo and Matamba kingdoms in modern-day Angola. Nzinga's life was a masterclass in diplomacy, strategy, and relentless warfare against the Portuguese slave traders who sought to conquer her land. She first came to prominence as a diplomat sent by her brother to negotiate a peace treaty with the Portuguese. In a now famous encounter, the Portuguese governor offered her only a cushion on the floor to sit on, a deliberate insult to show her inferior status. Nzinga, unfazed, ordered one of her servants to get on all fours, creating a human chair for her to sit on, meeting the governor at eye level. This single act showed she would never be seen as less than an equal. When she became queen, she inherited a kingdom under constant threat. Nzinga proved to be a military genius. She forged alliances with neighboring kingdoms, and even the Dutch, playing her enemies against each other. She learned to use European firearms and adapted her army's tactics. More than that, she personally led her soldiers into battle, riding alongside them well into her 60s. For 4 decades, she fought a guerrilla war that drained the resources and the will of the Portuguese. Queen Nzinga never surrendered. She died a free woman in a kingdom that remained independent thanks to her incredible leadership. Her legacy is that of the ultimate freedom fighter, a brilliant ruler who dedicated her entire life to defending her people's liberty. From the disciplined Agaji to the indomitable Queen Nzinga, these women were more than just warriors. They were leaders, strategists, and symbols of power who shaped the continent. Their stories challenge our perceptions of history and prove that courage knows no gender. They defended their homes, led armies, and built empires in a world that often tried to silence them. So the next time you think of history's greatest warriors, make sure you remember the names Amanirines, Amina, Ya Asantewa, the Agaji, and the legendary Queen Nzinga. Their legacies are a powerful reminder of the strength and resilience that has always been at the heart of Africa. Thanks for watching. If you found these stories as incredible as I did, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next dive into the untold stories of history. See you next time.